Welcome back to This Week in Agriculture. I'm still joined by Amos. Amos, let's look at another topic of conversation for today. A directive by Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya to ban donkey slaughter for export has elicited mixed reaction from stakeholders. According to Munya, owners of slaughterhouses have 1 month to change the nature of their businesses, as the government will declare the export of donkey meat and products illegal.
So we want to stop that criminality, and we want to stop that brutality, restore the donkey to its rightful place in our society, that of supporting livelihoods and providing that crucial transport that is not easy to get, especially for the lower echelons of our society who don't have enough money to buy other forms of transport like motorcycles and vehicles.
Tumekuja kulilia serikali wafunge hiyo vichinjio, maana wakati hatukuwa tunajua ati punda yetu inaenda wapi, hatukujua ati inaenda kuchinjwa, lakini wakati tumesikia inachinjwa, tungelilia tu serikali watufungie tu hiyo vichinjio ndio mama wapate kwenda mbele.
Tufungie ni silota ya kuchinja funda juu umeleta taabu na mmeongezea sisi wakora. Sisi hawezi lala, wakora unakuja tu kusunguka kutafuta funda, kubeba malori, unawakanga malori kupeleka sijui wapi.
Amos, what is your take on this?
I think from an animal rights point of view, I think that's a good move by the government because the welfare of our animals needs to be taken care of. But also speaking of that, in this country what has been happening is most of the donkey meat has not been in the mainstream market. It's not been being tested at all that. We've had rumors of people trying to sell donkey meat to Kenyans without their knowledge. And this has really subjected Kenyans to a food safety issue. Because if this meat is not tested by the required bodies, then that means that we could be consuming something that is not good for consumption. So a ban means that we are going to have a total ban of slaughtering these animals. One, we are going to save these animals of the agony and all that. Two, we are going to protect Kenyans from this unsafe food. Because donkeys have provided an avenue where people can slaughter anything and just provide it in the market. Okay. So that's a very good move by the government to protect Kenyans. Okay.
The question I'll ask next is, this is a very new business. I don't think they've been, this business has been running for the last 5 years. It's around 3 years now. Does it mean the government or we didn't think it through fast before they were given licenses to operate the slaughterhouses?
I think what happened was probably is the move by the government to explore external markets. Because generally, I don't think here in Kenya donkey meat is acceptable. Not so many people are receptive to it. So it was an opportunity by the government to explore external markets. But at what expense? Because when they introduced those licenses to slaughter those donkey meat, I think they also exposed Kenyans to some level of food insecurity. Insecurity in terms of safety. And that's why I tend to think culturally here, in terms of rights, animal rights perspective, it was not a well-thought move for government to introduce licensing of slaughtering donkeys for export. Okay. It was not a good move.
Okay, I've also seen reports whereby they say if donkeys are not really protected, they'll be extinct by 2026. Do you think we also had enough donkeys for this kind of business?
I think, one, no. Two, I think what happens in this country is that donkeys are really exploited. And from an animal rights point of view is that the governments can do more. The government can do more to protect animal rights. I think in this country, animal rights is something that we don't take very seriously. We forget that animals have got feelings as well. So I think we need to really enforce animal rights laws. And by a move to ban the donkey slaughter, I think, is something that should start the conversations around animal rights issues. All animals have got rights. We need to treat animals with dignity.
Talking of rights, what about the rights of the owners of these slaughterhouses?
I think we shouldn't be comparing rights to money, because rights is something that you are entitled to, whether someone is going to make a loss or not. Because what voice do these animals have? They don't have a voice. There has to be a system that gives them a voice. At least the slaughterhouse owners have got a voice to say we are losing. But what voice do these animals have to say, you are killing us, you are subjecting us to agony and indignity? They don't have a voice. And we need laws that protect them, laws that give them a voice that they don't have, a voice that the slaughterhouse owners do have. At least then they can complain that we are losing money.
Okay.
But the animals can't complain.
But why all of a sudden the demand for donkey and donkey products have gone off the roof?
Because I think the world is taking animal rights issues importantly, very seriously than before. So it is my hope that even here locally, we can start taking animal rights issues more seriously than we are doing right now.
Okay. Talking of animal rights, I think the donkey is not the only animal that is having problems at the moment.
Yes.
We also see a lot of dogs roaming around. Some are being hit on the road. Who's supposed to protect such animals?
I think the laws are supposed to protect the animals. And there are laws that protect these animals. But the way they are implemented in this country is also questionable. You find even the way we slaughter these animals is in a very indignifying manner. You find someone just picks a panga and they chop their heads off. These rights need to be protected. And we need to start these conversations that animal rights are important rights that needs to be respected and protected. And the state has a role to play in this. But also us individuals have a role to play in this, in protecting their rights. Because we expect human rights to be protected. If we expect human rights to be protected, why can't we expect animal rights to be protected as well?
I see in other countries they really follow animal rights. They really protect the animals.
That's
How
correct.
comes in this country? Is it the way we were brought up, or we just don't care?
It's a question of culture, how we brought up. I wouldn't want to say we are not empathetic, but I would say something needs to change in this country. Clearly, as you put it, animal rights issues in this country are not taken very seriously. So these are conversations that needs to be picked up across board. These are things that we need to start talking in our homes, in our institutions, and everywhere we go, because they are very important that we discuss these issues and decide to respect animal rights.
Okay. Thank you very much, Amos. Now let's look at another topic of conversation for today. Duckweed has attracted the attention of scientists because of its apparent high potential for feed resource for livestock. Normally considered as a weed, duckweed in many parts of the world, many aquaculture farmers are now embracing the use of duckweed as a common feed for their fish.
Technical literature supports that duckweeds have a strong potential as a primary feedstocks for production of livestock and fish. The crop does not produce toxic alkaloids and are palatable to a wide variety of domestic animals and fish. As Robert Mokio, a fish aquaponic expert, reveals that duckweed is a suitable crop for producing animal feeds and that the meat produced from animals feed on duckweed is tasty and nutritious for human consumption.
Duckweed is a plant like any other plant. You can harvest it from the water source, feed it directly to the animals. You'll find cows eating it. You'll find animals such as pigs eating raw the way it is. We also have people who've decided to have it, to plant it on stagnant water. As it multiplies, they harvest it and then they dry it. After drying, they can decide to, formulate it with other things. Probably like you can mix it with fish meal or rice bran, and then you have a whole feed of your own. We have people who actually use it, feed it directly to even fish, because we realize fish really love taking duckweed. So duckweed can be harvested and given to animals as it is, or it can be dried, it can be ground, depending on how somebody can be able to feed the animal. This is a plant that also needs to receive its own minerals, and it also needs sunlight. So if you have, let's say, a water pan somewhere in your location, in your locality, you can throw a few duckweed there and give it time, a month or two, it will cover the whole area. And by it covering, it's able to prevent, it will prevent things like direct evaporation, because it will form a sheet, yeah? And as it prevents evaporation, if you have aquatic animals down there, they're able to be shielded from predators, yeah? Especially if you have a fish pond, yeah? It can protect your animals.
Duckweed grows rapidly and are high in protein and dietary minerals. They are also low in fiber. The crop grows as small colonies and float on the surface of quiet water bodies. The culture reduces evaporation from the water surface and decreases growth of undesirable algae, as Mokio explains.
And the most important thing about duckweed is it's able to control algae. What it does, it competes with algae of territory, and then since it grows faster, it will be able to choke the algae. By it choking, we won't be able to have algae growing around. And algae is very, especially for fish farmers, algae is not very, you wouldn't want your algae growing in your pond. So one way of getting rid of algae is by growing duckweed. FAO has really taken interest on duckweed on different perspectives, in terms of sewage treatment, and also in terms of it being a source of feed because of its chemical composition. Duckweed grow naturally on stagnated water. If you go around, even on Mombasa Road, you can be able to see where there's stagnant water. You can see green crested leaf plants growing, and they form like a green sheet on top of water. So, like, take an example, if you've seen hyacinth, but now you're seeing small things that are real smaller than hyacinth, yeah? Those are duckweeds. And I'm sure most people have seen it, probably you've seen it, but most people ignore it because you think it's quite insignificant as a plant.
Reporting for Farmers TV, I am Marin Munyao.
What is your take on this one?
When I always hear of weed, it means something that is in places where it's not supposed to be. So if we have duckweed in our waters, that means it's not supposed to be there. And what is making it to thrive in that water? We have polluted our water systems. All the runoffs from our farms, after we use all those fertilizers, ends up in water. One of the conditions that make duckweed to thrive in water is high levels of nutrients. So we have pumped a lot of these nutrients, these fertilizers in the water, to a level where we are having these weeds. And when we have these weeds in the water bodies, we have so many problems. They cause a lot of problems. One, they compete for oxygen in the water. And that puts the animals in the water and the organisms in the water in danger. Sunlight, for example. They compete for sunlight. So there's no sunlight in the water. That means it affects production in the water. And the water animals feed on those sea plants. How are we supposed to have these sea plants when we don't have light? And finally, we are talking about using this duckweed to feed on fish. That's also very problematic, because the way we have been living, we have polluted our waters with all manner of chemicals. And some of them are heavy metals, for example, coming from our farms, coming from our industries. There's been a level of impunity that you can't imagine in this country, Philip, to a level where industries release their raw waste in water. This waste is killing animals. But this duckweed, they also suck these heavy metals. So when you are going to use them to feed on the fish, that means the heavy metals end up in the fish.
True.
And when humans now consume this fish, where does these heavy metals end up in? They end up in our systems. Heavy metals like mercury, chromium, all these have a lot of health impacts on human beings.
Okay.
And we start complaining. We don't know what is the cause of the problems that we are seeing. The cause of the problems that we are seeing today is that we have ignored the basics. We have oversimplified our systems. We are overdoing it. We have released chemicals in our water bodies and even in our air. And that's why we are having all these weeds. And that's why we are having all this pollution happening. The other day we had an expose of Lake Victoria being polluted. Before then there was River Nairobi. It's so polluted. People release raw sewage in rivers here in Kenya. And that's why we're having all this weed, the water hyacinth, the duckweed and all that. So it's not a good move. We need to address these issues from the root cause and not just seeing opportunities of finding feeds. What kind of feeds are we talking about? We're talking about polluted feeds.
Okay. So who is to blame for all this? Who is to blame for letting excess fertilizer go into our lakes, into our rivers? I don't know.
I think we have government agencies that are responsible for different functions. For example, of the situation of industries releasing waste in water systems, I would blame National Environment Management Authority because that is their responsibility. Even all this kind of pollution that's happening, it rests with the National Environment Management Authority. They are the coordinating body. They need to make sure that all these other government agencies are taking environmental matters quite importantly. And when we have a situation where agricultural systems are just releasing chemicals in our environment without NEMA taking action, reminding the Ministry of Agriculture, reminding all the responsible bodies to take action, then it is NEMA that we should be addressing. That they are sleeping on their work. They need to do more. And they always talk about resources and all that. We cannot keep complaining about having insufficient resources to conduct our mandate when Kenyans are dying, when we're having situations where we are losing livelihoods. We cannot keep hiding behind insufficient resources as we subject Kenyans to all these kind of vulnerabilities.
When you look at the feature that we saw the other day
Yes.
on the pollution of Lake Victoria,
Yes.
does this mean we've really lost our morals in terms of, as a manager of a factory, I'm releasing toxin into the lake and I know people are getting their fish and livelihood from there. Do you think as a country, even without NEMA being involved, we've lost our own morals?
I think the industry, what the industry looks at most is profit. It forgets that we have people to be protected. And this is also coming down to even us individuals. Like I said, even River Nairobi is polluted by sewage. Developers here in Nairobi, they don't want to develop sewer systems. They release raw sewage into the water directly. I think what is happening right now is that disconnect, that we are not associating this level of pollution with the problems that we are facing. Because when you release that raw sewage into water, it just comes back to you as a health issue. And if it doesn't come back to you as a health issue, it is making someone lose a livelihood. And when these people lose livelihoods, it means the cost of living, they can't even afford basic necessities. They can't even pay taxes, for example. Then that means you are going to break down all the functions. So people need to start connecting all this because we live in a system. And what do we mean by a system? A system is something that is connected. So what happens at your household level might destabilize the system. So we need to start being responsible of our waste, of our consumption. We need to make sure that we manage our waste very well. At industrial level, I think somebody who is motivated by profit will care about people, will care about the well-being of the environment. The government now comes in. They need to enforce these laws. They need to cancel licenses of these industries that are polluting our environment. They need to impose heavy penalties on these industries that are polluting our environment. And they need to restore back our environment to that condition where it used to serve us better. And those people who are responsible need to be held accountable. We cannot have industries in this country that are not held accountable.
Oh, okay. So if we go back to the duckweed, now that a few of them, or the scientists are saying, can be used as fish feed, do you think if we can manage our pollution problems, could that be a solution of taming the duckweed?
Yes, because it thrives in a condition where we have high levels of nutrients. So if we are managing our soil fertility using, for example, manure, and not excessive pumping of fertilizers in our farms that ends up in the water, then we control these weeds. And if we have necessary conditions in our water bodies, I think the fish will thrive. We don't need to feed them on the weeds. They can thrive in water, because if you have water that receives adequate sunlight, that has adequate oxygen, then the system sustains itself. You don't need now to start harvesting weeds to be able to feed them back. But another thing is that I think the weed itself is a problem. And we need to start looking into our ways of life. It's not just the duckweed. We have water hyacinths causing problems. It has affected recreational activities in our water bodies. You can't go swimming in a water body that's full of weeds, for example. So we are so confined now that if you can't pay for a swimming pool somewhere, then there's no free-flowing water where you can just jump in and enjoy. It's only those who can afford to go to big hotels and pay for swimming pool rates that now can enjoy swimming. But those of us who are lower in the economic ladder that cannot afford to go to those big hotels and swim, we no longer can afford swimming, for example. So the basics, those recreational activities, we can no longer do them because where we used to go has been polluted.
Sure.
Look at even our parks. No one maintains our parks nowadays. They are full of litter. Go to Hur Park, it's full of litter to a point where the government is thinking of hiving it off for an expressway. We don't really value these spaces, these green spaces where people can go and find peace. And that's why we are having a lot of mental health issues in this country. Because most of us who can't afford to go to those big resorts for retreats, we don't have places that are publicly available for us. And these places are our green spaces. The water bodies where we can go and just swim. The parks where you can go and just enjoy the nice environment and just have a chat and reconnect with nature. We need to protect these spaces. We need to protect our water bodies.
Okay. From all the topics we've looked at today, as we wind up, they are all negative stories. Does it mean at the moment we don't have anything positive, especially for the agricultural sector, that we can look at and really appreciate? Because it seems we are just complaining after one complaint to another one. Do you think there's anything we can really appreciate?
For me, I would say there is hope. There is hope in the sense that people are now realizing that what they have been doing is not sustainable. And that's why we have like this report, the Sugar Task Force report that has been released, recommending that we need now to start empowering our farmers. So there is hope that as a country we are realizing that the direction we've been taking is not been the right direction. So when we start having these initiatives that are going to empower our farmers, then we are going to improve. But our farmers have also been very resilient. In this phase of adversity, like you say, it's all sad and gloom. They have really, really come together. like in Makueni, where Greenpeace Africa has been working in Kitui and Machakos, we have farmer networks. And through these networks, these farmers are finding solutions to some of these challenges. They are pulling together resources to be able to sustain their production systems. They are teaching each other production practices that are sustainable, for example, ecological farming. So with all this community organizing, with all this realization that what we have been practicing is not working, we need to move away. With organizations like Greenpeace Africa coming and trying to work with farmers to build these networks, collectively as a country, I think we can do better.
Thank you very much, Amos. That is a very good point on where to end today. I hope our viewers have really benefited from the conversations we've had today, and we'll definitely invite you again.
Thanks very much, Philip, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Karibu. That is it from This Week in Agriculture. I've been your host, Philip Keitan. Until next week, goodbye.